So this is what we call the ZWAC show, the Zero Waste Advocacy Committee of the Northern California Recycling Association. I call it by that one, just one word, all lowercase, ZWAC show. Or to use it as a verb, we like to ZWAC people who are not pursuing zero waste. But we meet
in New Jersey, they use that term to describe other things.
Well, you might, but right now we're just talking about zero waste.
Okay.
So we meet every Tuesday, the second Tuesday of every month. We start the show at 5 o'clock with cocktails. 5:30, the show starts in earnest. We usually feature a pioneer of the zero waste movement, who has been interviewed for the Recycling Archives, which is right now still a part of Urban Orbit, is looking for a new home. Susan Kinsella, who's with us, is the director of the program. And after we feature a pioneer for recycling, we have a hot topic. And tonight's hot topic will be reusables, where we're going to have two local entrepreneurs talk about their reusable business and what impact that has on zero waste and why the heck they decided to try that business anyway. And I'm glad to see that we have Caleb, who is also with a reuse business. We like having entrepreneurs on this show because, at least in my view, if we're going to have a circular economy, we have to have an economy. And I think government has taken zero waste about as far as it can take it with the limitations that it has. And it's about time for the private sector to push it down the road a little bit. That's my view anyway. So that's tonight's show. I want to start by featuring Gary Liss. And Gary's one of these people that if we had an hour or so, I could go through all of his accomplishments. But I'm going to shorten that. And I'm going to tell him something that he's accomplished that he doesn't even really know for sure, which is that there wouldn't be a ZWAC without Gary Liss, because I started ZWAC years and years ago when I was on the NCRA board before Doug Brooms joined as co-chair. And Gary was the person that got me involved in zero waste advocacy 30 or so years ago. I was a lawyer. I was doing work for Urban Orbit, and Gary was executive director at the time of CRA, and he was trying to put together a series of debates about a then hot topic called flow control. And he looked high and he looked low, and the only person he could find to talk about it from the recycling point of view was me. So for better or for worse, that was my start with zero waste advocacy. And so, but for Gary Liss, we wouldn't be having the show tonight. He's done many, many other more things. And Susan Kinsella is going to read an excerpts from an interview that he gave with Tanya Levy kind of a long time ago. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk to him about something that's, I don't think was covered in his interview because he probably hadn't done very much of it by then, a little bit, but not fully. And that's about the term zero waste. Words matter, especially in this business where we talk about things like waste interchangeably with recyclables sometimes. So what is zero waste? Well, a lot of people thought in Europe that zero waste meant burning stuff, that was a totally cool way to recycle. Gary, among many people, thought, no, that's not so cool. That really isn't what zero waste is about. But Gary fought hard. And to me, he's kind of a superhero for enshrining the term zero waste to mean it ain't being burned and it ain't being buried. But I'd like to start tonight's segment about Gary to ask him, tell us a little bit about that fight, how hard it was, who you had to fight against, and what do you think led to prevailing in that?
Well, thanks, John, for the invite tonight and for that question. It has been a long fight. We haven't totally prevailed. I think we are winning on what the term zero waste means. But the folks we're fighting against are the wasters, the waste haulers like Waste Management Inc., now WM, and the burners, Covanta. Underwriter Laboratories convened a whole task force to develop a national standard, an American National Standards Institute, ANSI standard on what zero waste means. And we've worked for 5 years with Waste Management, Covanta at the table with some environmental groups like myself and Rory Baki and others. and we were able to bring that to a halt without them adopting the wrong definition of zero waste. So that was probably our biggest tactical success, that we blocked the dilution of that term. In terms of promoting zero waste, probably our biggest success has been the development of the zero waste certification system that's now been adopted by the U.S. Green Building Council as true total resource use and efficiency zero waste rating system. And that true system has gotten over 1,000 zero waste advisors trained around the world, and is promoting facilities as true zero waste all over the world. And that has probably the biggest impact on letting people know that what true zero waste is, what real zero waste is all about. And the last thing is the Zero Waste International Alliance was formed in 2002 to set standards, and we've accomplished that. And people are looking increasingly to ZWIA, Zero Waste International Alliance, ZWIA.org, for what does zero waste mean. And now we have a hierarchy of highest and best use. And those documents are what people are relying on to fight for the brand, to fight for what real zero waste means. So I think we're succeeding. We're not yet prevailing. There still is a fight to come. Anytime you hear the word zero waste to landfill, no landfill, landfill free, those are clues that they may be burning a lot of the material. And we need to watch for those and not use those terms.
Well, thank you, Gary. In 5 minutes, you can't really convey how hard all that was. I mean, that was high-level political tactics, constant diligence to see things through, to get people lined up. That's really a huge accomplishment. I can't understate that. So thank you.
Thanks, John.
And hey, listen, I'd like to flash this. This is a copy that just fell out of somewhere. We were reorganizing our space here, and it's called Open the Flow, Maximize Recycling for AB 939 Open Competition. A nice little graphic on the front showing a faucet with reusable stuff coming in and recyclable stuff coming out. And it's by a group called Recycling for Competition. And I think John Moore is one of the authors, along with Rick Best, Joan Edwards, and various others. Quite a nice little book. Gary Liss.
Still available for sale if you want one.
There it is.
I just happen to have a few extra copies here too, John.
Probably need more.
Right.
I've gotten a lot of mileage out of the book. Plato
Right.
said a man has to do 4 things in life. He has to have a son, he has to own a home, he has to plant a tree, and he has to write a book. And I've done all those things except write the book. So I view my co-authorship of that work to have satisfied the 4th criteria. Thank you.
The book I consider having wrote was helping with the Managing and Transforming Waste Streams website at EPA, with over 100 different policies and programs for zero waste and high waste diversion for communities, with over 350 examples from around the country of actual contracts, ordinances, policies, and program information that you can cite in staff reports. And we're using that all the time now when we do zero waste plans for communities. It's a wealth of information. Portia Sinnott led that effort with Ruth Abbey, Rick Anthony, and myself among the people contributing to that. And it's a wonderful resource for people fighting for zero waste.
Well, it's a huge undertaking, but I don't think Plato was counting websites. All right, so with that introduction to Gary and his incredible body of lifetime work, Susan, can you excerpt some of the better parts of his interview for us?
Sure. There's a little bit about what he was talking about too. So this reading is from an interview that Gary did with Tanya Levy back in 2007 at a retreat in New York State's Adirondack Mountains. The retreat had been organized by Dan Knapp and Neil Seldman and was where the idea first started for developing the recycling archives. So even though this interview is from 15 years ago and Gary has done tons of innovative and creative work since then, I'm struck by how contemporary it still sounds. I've known Gary for something like over 30 years, and if somebody asked me to describe him, I would talk about all the energy that he emanates, sparking constant new ideas and turning a lot of them into reality. And in this 2007 interview, we see Gary starting his career the same way, throwing himself into projects with immense enthusiasm, turning them into advances in the field, starting new organizations, and constantly evaluating which paths to follow and then expanding on the best ideas. So here's Gary talking about how he got started in recycling. Gary says, I'm a product of Earth Day 1970. I was in college in Boston at Tufts University as a freshman. In the previous fall, a big Earth Day event was being organized on campus, and I joined and was so taken by all the Earth Day activities. I found that I could contribute quickly and effectively by helping to set up the recycling program on campus. It was invigorating to see an event go from a set of ideas to a flow of materials that you could see and touch as a direct result of organizing for change. I got incredibly excited about doing things for the environment. So Earth Day 1970 was a major change for me. I'd gone into Tufts as a major in electrical engineering. I thought I could go into my father's electronics business with that degree behind me. But as a result of Earth Day, I decided to change my major. By the next fall, I'd signed up to be an environmental engineering major in the civil engineering department, and that was a new beginning for me in a new direction. After graduating as an environmental engineer, I was hired by the Department of Engineering in Newark, New Jersey, setting up the environmental office there under the guidance of the city engineer and EPA's technical experts. For many years, I thought of myself as a governmental entrepreneur, helping to set up new offices, new programs, and the adoption and implementation of new policies. That was my forte, and I was able to do great things. The US EPA was a major influence because it trained me in what I viewed then as the state of the art in solid waste management. The EPA is why I supported waste to energy until I came to California. I was trained by EPA that waste to energy was a good substitute for landfilling. In the late 1970s, I was chair of the Sierra Club Solid Waste Committee in New Jersey. We wrote in those early Sierra Club documents that recycling and waste to energy could work together. One of the things that uniquely characterized me at this point in my life was that I was in two camps, recycling and waste to energy, at the same time. In the waste to energy camp, I was advocating for how to design incineration systems to be compatible with recycling. And in the recycling camp, I was advocating for how waste to energy could advance an environmental agenda. Then I moved west to California, and I took a job being solid waste manager in San Jose. I continued trying for a while to argue that recycling and waste to energy could work together. But while you, he says this to Tanya, who's interviewing him, and many others embraced my support for recycling, you also convinced me that the arguments for burning garbage were erroneous. Okay, now you have to realize that Tanya, who worked for the city of Berkeley and had written a groundbreaking report that ended up stopping the first mass burn incinerator proposed for the state of California, says to him, and we pounded on you every time. And Gary said, well, that's right. But what really got to me was when you asked hard questions that my colleagues at EPA and beyond in New Jersey, all of them major advocates for waste to energy, were unable to answer to my satisfaction. That was the turning point for me. Coming to grips with this failure was an interesting evolution for me. It has stayed with me for the rest of my career. I've actually probably visited on the order of 20 to 30 waste incinerators around the world, both in Europe and in the US. And as I said earlier, EPA had trained us to be supportive of incineration. And I believed in it until I came to California and was unable to answer these questions posed by local activists. Since then, I came to feel very strongly that incineration is just a bad idea. I mean, more energy is conserved by waste reduction and recycling than is produced through any waste to energy system. Far more energy could be conserved by reducing, reusing, recycling, and composting than could be ever be produced through incineration. So we need to stop building incinerators and move on. Okay, so now I want to comment here that one of the things that has always fascinated me about recycling is that it's always been created and changed and shifted based on trying this invention or going down that path or embracing new ideas. But to keep innovating in a positive direction in a complex field like recycling, you need to put your preconceived assumptions aside when evaluating issues and potential new directions so that you can make the wisest choices. And that's really hard to do. But it's something that Gary has excelled at, driven by his great enthusiasm and energy. As he put it, even in 2007, Gary says, "We're at the beginning of what I see another 20 or 30 years of exhilarating change, shifting mindsets and finding our friends and models and promoting the hell out of them." So Gary started and ran and guided many, many organizations. And early on, he says, "Clifford Case appointed me to the founding board of directors of the National Recycling Coalition, the NRC. Cliff carried most of the load of running NRC from 1978 to 1983, and then I became president of the NRC for the next 3 years. I was running NRC out of my office in San Jose as a voluntary contribution to the industry. This was before NRC had any paid staff. During my terms as president of the National Recycling Coalition, we committed significant resources to creating state recycling organizations, or SROs, all around the country." Now, Gary also recognized the promise of zero waste and embraced it right away, saying, "The news that Dan Knapp brought back in 1996 from Canberra, Australia, about no waste by 2010 was one of the first zero waste ideas to go viral on the internet. It jumped past the lesser goals to embrace the real number that we had in our heads and hearts. Zero waste organizations sprang up overnight. However, I want to tell you, there was a danger right from the beginning with those in the industry who didn't want recycling to be too successful, for fear it would hurt businesses built on wasting. So they wanted to capture zero waste in a sense by seeming to agree with it, by also working against it. So Gary strategized with others on how to prevent that. And as he tells it, "We succeeded by performing what amounted to a branding exercise for zero waste. First, we agreed on a definition of zero waste under a slogan that says it all: no burn, no bury. That simple step closed off the main competitors for the discard supply from appropriating and using the zero waste brand. We were concerned that there was going to be a lot of greenwashing of what zero waste meant, because we'd already seen greenwashing used to discredit and confuse our friends and allies on other recycling issues like plastics pollution. We wanted to brand zero waste internationally with a peer-reviewed process. And then we posted the definition on the Zero Waste International Alliance website. ZWAC is now a significant contributor to the worldwide movement towards zero waste, and I continue to help them. The Grassroots Recycling Network, GRRN, is another organization I'm proud of having helped at the outset. It was Rick Anthony who brought the idea to the California Resource Recovery Association board. He wanted us to put $5,000 of our scarce resources into helping to form a new national grassroots organizing effort. Its purpose was to directly and forcefully counter the reactionary rollback in recycling goals that was starting to emerge in the early 1990s. The Sierra Club, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and NCRA became the founding members of the Grassroots Recycling Network. Our strategy worked, and within a year, the GRN had changed the entire dynamic. We went from everybody talking about rolling back recycling goals to virtually no mention of that idea a year later. Instead, suddenly everyone was trying to respond to zero waste. The message GRN was putting out was that zero waste was a lofty but fascinating idea, now all the more so since the national government of New Zealand had endorsed it as a goal. So by promoting zero waste, we put the anti-recycling goal people on the defensive rather than us being on the defensive. And Tanya comments, so you're saying that what you did was promote zero waste instead of the recycling rollbacks, which in turn changed both the framework and the topic. And Gary says, exactly. Tanya asks him, what tasks have you set yourself that remain unfinished? And here I have to laugh because Gary has done so much since 2007, and yet his answer here still sounds so contemporary. He says, zero waste is the unfinished task. Right now, we're developing the next set of innovations, contracts, incentives, policies, new rules, and changing the entire industry, not just the garbage and recycling industry this time, but the whole fabric of industry in America and the world. It's no small task. There's lots of things to do. My role is helping to set the body of knowledge down in print, train people on what successes have happened, and inspire them to figure out how to do it in their own communities in ways that will be appropriate for them. The leaders of the movement promote zero waste, and that's where the heart and soul of the movement is going. We all bring that same commitment to making real change in society that needs to happen for us to achieve zero waste. And with everyone's good work, we'll get there. And Tanya says, righteous. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Susan. Amazing excerpts. I really appreciate it.
So I'm gonna open it up to questions for Gary in a moment, but I'm gonna take the prerogative and ask one of my own. And I hate to frame this negatively because Gary, you have been a big proponent of innovating in a positive direction, and your positive energy is remarkable, and I appreciate it. But I'm going to have to ask a negative question. It seems like in the things that you've experienced, you're in a unique position to answer this, which is, it seems like the zero wasters on the one side and the wasters and incinerators on the other side are really competing for the same feedstock, for the same stuff. And one side has a little bit more power and influence politically than the other. So as a cautionary tale, what's the playbook look like for the wasters and incinerators to try to co-opt the zero wasters, to try to erode their influence? What do they try to do?
It's the environmental movement and the progressive businesses. We neutralize the flow control debate by bringing together businesses who wanted the right to choose their hauler, together with local governments who wanted to have an open, competitive environment. That was a winning combination that from the early 1990s till now has kept the whole flow control issue neutralized in the legislature. The power came from the combination of local governments and businesses. Today, the energy and enthusiasm that the elected officials are listening to is from the environmental movement, largely due to the plastics crisis. And we have media attention bring these challenges to light so that every elected official is trying to do something about that. So the environmental movement and progressive business leaders, like we brought together with the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council and now involved with the True Zero Waste program, are really a key part of building the successes of the future, like we did in beating back the flow control problem in the past.
How can we encourage more businesses to enter the field?
It's not just businesses that are service providers for the field. I'm saying it's the fabric of industry focusing on climate change and sustainability for real, that are moving us forward. Thousands of businesses have adopted zero waste as a goal and have diverted over 90% of their materials from landfills, incineration, and the environment. It's those progressive businesses that I say are leading the charge. Whenever we do a zero waste plan for a community, we look for who are the progressive businesses, because the local elected officials will be blown away by hearing the details of those zero waste businesses in their communities, and it makes zero waste seem possible when they see it done by a business in their community. In addition, service providers are needed to help those businesses and communities get to zero waste. And the innovation we've seen through the pandemic in the reusable foodware area is particularly exciting, showing new paths forward for new inventions, new services, new ways of handling our materials that are going to be some of the next major steps forward. So I really think it's a combination of focusing on the climate. It's the climate, stupid, should be the answer to the question now. We've got to solve the climate problem. Businesses are strongly supporting that still. And those businesses are with us together with the strong environmental leadership and good media coverage are going to push us and elected officials in the swing back towards progressive policies that we're working towards at the national and state level.
Well, that's quite a message of hope. And in fact, it's taking a conservative point of view. We need to conserve resources.
Yeah.
I don't want to hog all the airtime. I could talk to you for hours, but I want to open it for other people to ask you questions because it's such a great thing to have you here. So who else has a question for Gary?
I do.
Dan.
Gary, I wonder, is it okay?
Sure.
Gary, I wonder if you could comment briefly on the difference between diversion as a way of measuring progress and landfill reduction as a way of measuring recycling's progress.
Well, as you advocate for, landfill reduction is a key barometer and much more powerful than the artificiality of diversion counting, which we've had to deal with since the early days in California, particularly. For zero waste, we say there's more than one way to count. More than one goal that we're trying to achieve, and particularly when you look at reduce and reuse, they're actually reducing your recycling diversion rates calculations. What you're needing to do is look at the end result, which is reducing the amount going to landfill, but also the investment of those resources in the community, the triple bottom line for real. Helping provide high quality clothing, furniture, food to people in need, to provide greater resilience to the community. That investment back into the community is another key measure of great importance. We were required in the Fort Collins Zero Waste Plan to look at it from a triple bottom line perspective, which they base their whole city government on, and that's what rose to the surface. It's all about getting those resources back into the community, like you do at Urban Ore. So it's more than just getting tons diverted from landfill. It's putting them where they should be and using them again and again, rather than having to mine, manufacture, and distribute new products.
Thank you.
Other questions for Gary?
I'd like to take a minute to thank Dan and
sure.
Susan.
Actually, I threw in a question. Do you have any comments about the I don't know much about it, but the federal infrastructure bill and what it says or how it's dealing with recycling or zero waste?
Definitely. I'm coordinator for the Recycling is Infrastructure 2 campaign that was formed by Institute for Local Self-Reliance, Zero Waste USA, and the National Recycling Coalition as the steering committee. And we've been closely monitoring and advocating before it was adopted, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we're very familiar with what's going on there. There's a webinar next week, May 12th, on this topic, and May 24th, another one on funding. The key bottom line is there's about $250 million in the bipartisan infrastructure bill for facilities, and $75 million in there for outreach and education grants, largely to state and local governments, and in partnership with businesses. There's also $6 billion for $3 billion for research and development for batteries, and $3 billion for recycling of batteries in order to build the electric future of our vehicle fleet. They know they need to solve the battery problems that are literally burning up our infrastructure every day all around the country now. So the infrastructure funding is going to be a big support for innovations like we're about to hear in the next part of the program.
So are you finding that there's a resonance for the message that it's the climate stupid?
You're uniquely hearing that from me for the first time here. We certainly have been working on climate initiatives for a long time. In the interview, we talk about the Recyclers Global Warming Council we helped set up back in the early 2000 period. And Mark Gagliardi from for your backyard there was a key leader in that effort. But the zero waste is a key tool to helping address climate change, and climate change is accelerating far faster than we expected. So it's got to be a focus for our survival, and the short-term political calculus that climate change may not be important locally is going to fail, because the cost of not addressing it is going to outpace the reticence of getting involved. The cost of all the crises of weather and climate and famine and people having to leave one country over another because of all these problems is going to catapult climate change back into the top position it needs to be in, because all those costs are adding up as we predicted they would, and that cost is just too much to carry. We've got to solve that problem.
One thing we've talked about in previous editions of this show is the way that compost can save the world, and particularly carbon sequestration, which draws carbon out of the air. Is that a kind of a program that's getting any mileage in the discussions about the infrastructure bill?
Composting has definitely been part of it. There's a solicitation for the urban composting program from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We highlighted in our March 16th webinar. The RFAs, the request for applications, are due out momentarily, and they may be on our May 24th webinar highlighting the details of those if the RFAs are about to be released as we expect. So composting is definitely part of the equation. Part of the money is coming from the infrastructure bill. There's additional talk of there's a Compost Act that would provide more support. There's a Zero Food Waste Act in Congress. There's more bills in Congress now than there's been in decades. Over 20 major bills pending in Congress. There's a lot of activity, not only in composting but others. Susan had a question. Be happy to answer that, Susan.
Thanks. Hi. So I'm from Denver, and so I'm familiar with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, and I went to school at the University of Colorado Boulder. I didn't have a degree in engineering or anything. However, I live in Silicon Valley now, and I just heard that this huge donation was given by venture capitalists to Stanford of $1.1 billion, which is the largest gift ever to help climate change research and all of that. How does that help you? And I'm new to this, or I'm sort of newer to this whole thing. So how did that help you? And what do you think of that?
I think it's wonderful. It's just what I was talking about. And it's, again, what I was saying about businesses. Progressive businesses are going to help move us forward because elected officials are listening to them, and they have money and power. So that's just a great example of what's to come. I see us reinvesting in our economy, in the climate change arena. There's going to be more jobs there as a result of that. There's going to be a more efficient use of resources as a result of that. It's got to flow that way because of those dynamics. So I hadn't heard about that particular one. Would love to get information on that. If you could email that to Gary@GaryLiss.com, I'd appreciate it.
Gary@GaryLiss.com. I'm trying to think. I just saw it on like the Yahoo newsreel, like the Google newsreel. It came up, and then I was talking with the gentleman I'm friends with, who is an engineer in Silicon Valley. He was a little bit more familiar with it than I am. He lives here too, but he's sort of in the field, so he was a little more familiar. But what, I don't know. Let me write down your email. Hold on. What is it again?
I put it in chat.
Thank you.
And thank you, Susan Blackman, for the Chronicle.
If you go up to Oregon now on Interstate 5, which I did last summer, a huge change has happened. And again, this highlights the nature of progressive businesses flowing into an opportunity area. All along Interstate 5, there used to be these things called wigwam burners, and they were pumping out smoke all over the whole Northern California from burning forestry residues. Now, about every 5 to 10 miles on the side of the road, you see piles of compost being made out of wood, pallets, and all kinds of wood that isn't painted, and all these different colors of compost, black, brown, tan, every different color, and a lot of piles of stuff waiting to be shredded and composted. And that's in an agricultural area, and it's all along the whole. There are no more wigwam burners. They were outlawed. So the burning part of it is gone, and it's all switched to composting as far as I can tell. And it's all along the freeway, Interstate 5. You can see it all the way up through and into Oregon.
Definitely, that's the future, is these innovative businesses, which we're about to hear from.
And they're not all progressive. Believe me, a lot of them are real. They're run by sometimes fairly right-wing people, but nevertheless, they're doing the right thing.
But by progressive, I mean the innovations, right?
I understand. The words do matter, and it's important to know that the language is a wonderful instrument, and we need to use it better.
Right.
Any other questions for Gary? Where we have our entrepreneurs talk. All right, I'll ask one last question, Gary, which is, we're out here in California, we're the Northern California Recycling Association, compared to all the things you've been talking about, I feel like we have a kind of a little tiny voice, but it's an important voice. So how can we make sure our voice gets heard more?
I really think it's doing what NCRA is great at, which is continually commenting in local and state and national forums, challenging people to do the right stuff. And as a former elected official, it's very powerful if you keep asking in a coordinated way for folks to do the right things. There's still communities in the Bay Area that haven't adopted zero waste as a goal. Ask them to. There's still legislation to adopt. Write in and get the legislation through. I just heard the fluorescent light bill made it through one house in California today. So there's lots of things. NCRA's on the cutting edge. And your leadership is well known and is followed. You helped contribute to organizing the National Zero Waste Conference virtually, and the National Recycling Congress being renewed as a virtual event. NCRA helped organize those. NCRA is more powerful than you're giving it credit for, John. You are making a difference, and I do appreciate it. I do have one question for everyone on the call, though, before my part is over. If everyone on the call could unmute to answer the question, it would be really good. I wanted to find out, how much waste are you for? And I'd like to hear that from you guys. And how much waste are you for?
Zero.
Okay, some people didn't unmute. Come on, let's get everyone unmuted. And let me ask that again. How much waste are you for?
Zero.
Okay, now people down the hall from you didn't hear that at all. Let's try it one more time. How much waste are you for?
Zero.
Waste.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for all you've done. Thanks for joining us tonight. Please stay on if you can.
Yeah.
I wish we got a chance to talk about your local politics, but another time.
Right.
So tonight we're going to feature people who have businesses in the reuse field, and we have two people invited. One of them is here so far, so we're going to start with her. I had the pleasure of meeting Amy Golan, I hopefully pronounced that correctly, of Planet Renew. A couple of weeks ago, she was presenting at a sustainable products show on the UC Berkeley campus that I was invited to attend. And I felt a little badly for her because her table was right next to a couple of people touting plastics recycling. So that was kind of bad karma. But she had all these wonderful products on her table, and I was kind of hoping they were giveaway products, but they weren't. So that was kind of too bad. But she told me that she has a website where she sells different goods, and she has a brick and mortar store, which is unusual, selling reusable items. So I invited her tonight to talk about, and I'll ask her this question. Amy, tell us about your business and what your target market is.
So my business is a zero waste store, but it's honestly twofold. I started it 3.5 years ago after I looked at my carbon footprint and decided I could do a better job. So I started looking at the products that I was already using, in addition to carrying more products. And it really started out as kind of an outreach. I really believe in education. So fast forward 3.5 years, I have 2 brick and mortar stores, but I still do a lot of outreach. I go out to companies and I go out to schools and I educate on being zero waste, living zero waste, reducing your carbon footprint. I do workshops. So my target market is really honestly everybody that shops, everybody that needs soap, conditioner, shampoo, anything for the house, personal care, all of those things. There's alternatives too that are zero waste options. So I really feel passionate about sharing what those alternatives are and letting people know what they can do with their own life and their own purchases to help reduce their carbon footprint. So that's how it began. And here I am with 2 brick and mortar stores and still educating.
In a moment, I'll ask you how it is having a brick and mortar store during a pandemic, which I'm sure was not easy, but give us some examples of the alternatives you're talking about.
So a large part of my business is refilling, and I see there's somebody else here from Re-Up Refill who does the same thing. In fact, I get my toothpaste from them. But it's, think of anything that you need, that from dish soap, hand soap, shampoo, conditioner, lotion, stain remover, cleaners, everything that's in a liquid form, laundry detergent that you would buy in the store will come in a plastic container, most likely, and that's a single-use plastic container. And I just read an article Friday, which I thought our average recycling in California was 9%. It's now down to 5%. So if you do the math, it's really the best solution is to stop purchasing products in plastic. So the idea is you bring a container that you have. I happily can sell you glass or aluminum, but I prefer people to use what they have. That's kind of part of the circular economy. And you just come into the store and you pay per ounce. So I have 24 products, and you just come in and you would refill. So that's called the refill station. And then separately from that, I also have everything that could be a plastic alternative in terms of kitchen, could be your sponges, which unless you're buying a compostable one is made from plastic. Paper towels, they can be composted. A lot of people are not composting them. So I sell plastic or paper alternatives. I have personal care, I have makeup, I have feminine care, I have baby, I have pet. So just a little bit of everything that could be a product that you're just buying and it's in plastic or it's made of plastic, and I'm offering an alternative.
So I'm going to date myself a little bit by saying when I was a kid, we had milk delivery.
Mhm.
And once a week, it showed up on your porch and it was 6 to 8 glass bottles of really cold milk. And over the course of the week, you drank the milk, and on the collection day, you put your empty bottles out on the porch, and somebody came and took them and cleaned them and put milk back in them and brought them back. How did we get away from that, and why, and how can we get back to that?
Well, honestly, we should get back to it. I mean, we should go back to how a lot of things were operating pre the plastic revolution in the 70s. Why do we get away from it? Because technology came about where people wanted things faster, easier, and cheaper. And manufacturers started producing in mass so that things would be cheaper and easier and faster. But that doesn't mean it's better. Again, look at how everything is housed. Every kind of product you go through, your cabinets in your kitchen, in your bathroom, everything's most likely in plastic unless you've made an effort to buy an alternative. How can we get back to it? We change our buying behavior. The first key is awareness about that. And then the second step is looking at the options that can fit into your life and purchasing those. I mean, I always tell people, use what you have, you already purchased it, but when you need a new soap or a new conditioner or a new sponge or paper towels or even toilet paper, look at some better options out there, and something that's more sustainable and made better, zero waste, has a smaller carbon footprint.
So we're in kind of a time of pretty big economic hardship right now. And price is important to most people. So if I'm a consumer of detergent,
Mhm.
I like the idea of a refillable container, but somewhere along the way, somebody's got to pay to have it cleaned and someone's got to pay to have it gotten to me. And I don't see how the price is not going to be higher because of that. So what's the answer to that?
Well, if you're getting it delivered, there probably is a bit of a surcharge, but if you're willing to go to the store and refill, pricing will be comparable. I mean, a lot of my prices for your dish soap and your hand soap are actually cheaper than if you went and bought that in a new container. So if you have your Palmolive dish soap container and you brought it to my store and you filled it up, you're actually probably saving money, or it's equal. Your shampoos and conditioners, if you're buying a nicer brand that doesn't have all the chemicals and residue on it, it's comparable. So I hear that a lot, but it's not a barrier to purchase. Products are happily available at good prices, but you're going to have to go to the store. If you want it delivered to you, you're going to pay a little bit more for the delivery, but that's a convenience. I mean, right now, if you want your milk delivered, you're going to pay for that versus you go to the store and you buy your milk. It will be cheaper.
So you talk to your customers quite a lot, I would imagine.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about the demographics, what you're seeing in terms of the age levels, the education levels, the all the different kinds of people there are?
It's interesting. It's kind of shifted because I'm forward facing for 3.5 years. And originally it was, I'd say the ideal target market was female in probably her mid 30s to mid 40s. Somebody who wanted to be a little more mindful. And honestly, I've been at farmers markets, so they were buying fruits and vegetables that were healthier, better than at the grocery store anyway. So they were more mindful than the average person. But that has shifted. I mean, I've been on the UC Berkeley campus, and they're in their, 18 to 24 demographic, and they're extremely mindful of their carbon footprint, and they want to make a difference. They don't really have a salary yet or money, but they want to do better, and they want to learn, and they want to see what they can do. And over the course of time, I've seen more people, men. If I look at all the customers who come, in a month period time, it used to be 0 men, and now it's maybe 20%. So I think that the awareness is growing, if you want to call it a movement, of people just being more mindful of what to purchase, how to purchase. More people are getting involved. And who is my target market? My target market should be everybody that shops. If you buy anything, you can be my target market.
Do you
Are
get
you
thanked
still-
a lot?
Thanked?
Thanked?
I do, actually. I do have a lot of people like, thank goodness you're doing this. We need more people like you doing it, or, it must be tough. And I mean, am I making money off this? Not really. But do I feel passionate about it? Yes. I mean, I feel passionate to share what is possible, what people can do, and how they can make a difference in their own life. I mean, I'm doing a workshop in a couple of weeks on how to live sustainably in the East Bay. And that involves everything from how to shop here to let's look at your house and your energy and your water usage and your trash. Let's take a deep dive into all of those things, because all of those things are important and impactful. And if everybody made one change today, it would have an exponential effect. And that's important.
Are all of your stores in urban areas? Like,
I have one in Walnut Creek, and then I have one on the UC Berkeley campus during semesters. So I just shut it down for summer, and it'll open up again in August.
got it. Thank you.
So I'm part of the demographic that I think you need to reach. I grew up in an era where Procter & Gamble and the wasters and the plastic industry convinced me that convenience was great. And so as much as I like the idea of refillables and, paying cheaper competitive prices for refillable detergent, getting in the car, finding a place to park, going in the store, lugging things, it's not as convenient. So how do you get me over the hump? Besides the fact that I like what you're doing.
I'm working on it. I mean, I'm trying to share the why. Like, why should you do it, right? I mean, that's my constant battle every day. I wake up trying to figure out new creative ways of messaging on how to share the why you should make a difference. I mean, my first presentation, because I do a lot of presentations at schools, my PowerPoint presentation had a lot of pictures of turtles with straws up their nose and, what's happening to wildlife.
Yeah.
Those images are powerful. I mean, if you see the effects of our trash on the ecosystem, that has a lot of power to change people to do things. Some people are going to be, oh, that's so sad, and then disconnect when they go shopping. So I am honestly trying to figure out how to connect the dots. The newest news is not terribly uplifting in terms of all the microplastics and nanoplastics. And that's real, and that's happening right now. And they're there in dissections of animals that we're consuming, and they're hitting our soil and water. So things are imminent. These are reasons to change. How to get you to change personally? I mean, I think if I present you 10 different reasons and arguments, hopefully one will resonate with you.
You just have to reach me and make the argument, right?
Yeah.
So are things improving economically now for you after the shutdown and the pandemic, or?
Yeah, I've seen growth over the last year where people are shopping again, they're getting back out. I try to make it easy with deliveries and pickups also. You can place the order online and pick it up. I'll leave it outside. But more people are coming into the store now. They want to get out. They need a reason to get out of their house.
Do you have a delivery service that you work with?
I don't at the moment.
There's no DoorDash for detergent?
That's a good idea. That is a good idea.
Well, I'm sorry, our other presenter was sort of in that space, so I'm sorry
Yeah.
she's not here to talk about that.
I was actually interested. Is she here? Because I was interested to hear what she had to say also.
I don't think that she's here, unfortunately.
Darn.
That's all right. We can keep talking to you. And so what made you do this? There must have been something that sparked this for you that made you want to go into this crazy business. What was it?
Well, it boiled down to, if I was going to spend time away from my children, because I had a corporate job and I used to be a managing director of a company and I stopped. If I was going to go back and do something apart from my family, it had to be meaningful. It had to mean something that would make a difference, because if not, why? So that kind of became my why when it was some article I read, it was summer 2018, and it was like, oh, here's the 10 things that everybody should be doing to be eco. And I'm like, well, I'm much more eco-friendly than most people I know. And I was like, shoot, I'm only doing 4 or 5 of them. So that was kind of like my light bulb. If I'm only doing 4 or 5, that means the average person's doing 1, maybe, or 0.
Mhm.
And that led me into just doing more research into what are the statistics? How are we handling our lifestyles? I mean, our lifestyles are of convenience and cheap and fast, and I want it yesterday, and Amazon. And so I took a deeper dive into how I was living and how I could make improvements. And I started sharing with friends, and I launched my website. I started carrying products that I had been using for years, and I started looking to other ones. A local farmer's market in my area, the owner came to me and she's like, can you come up with a produce bag? I have thousands and thousands of shoppers are buying beautiful fruits and vegetables, and they're putting them in plastic bags, and they are going through hundreds of thousands of plastic bags per month with all of her farmers markets. So that led to, I have a few products that I've designed that are either in bamboo, which is a very sustainable product, or I did an organic cotton produce bag just to help get it out there. I actually, before Whole Foods was bought by Amazon, my produce bag was going to be in our local Whole Foods, but then Amazon bought Whole Foods, and then I had to go to the corporate chain to get my product looked at, and that never made it. Whole Foods used to be great. They used to support local businesses.
Well, that brings me to my next question. As a lawyer, I've represented a lot of Main Street businesses, not Wall Street businesses. So I'm kind of familiar with the challenges that they face. And there's a lot of them. You have landlords who want higher rent. You have competitors that want parts of your business. You have government that likes to regulate. I mean, God forbid you be a cannabis business, right? So what have been the biggest barriers to entry to market?
One of them really is the state of California. It's very expensive to own your own business in the state of California. I mean, they take a big chunk, whether you make $1 or $1 million. I mean, it's obviously scaled, but if I had this same business in most of the other states in the United States, it would be a lot less expensive. And that goes, if anyone owns their own business here, then they know that goes everything from just incorporating to your taxes to payroll. California is very expensive to operate in. So that, did give me pause, but I live here, my family's here, my kids are here. So I decided to just pull up my bootstraps and try to make it work.
So you won't be following Elon Musk to Texas then, huh?
No, not this year.
Do you have employees?
I do. Well, I had 8 when I was at UC Berkeley. They've now have moved on. They're graduating, or they'll be back maybe in the fall. And then I have 2 in my Walnut Creek store.
Do they have a payroll tax in Walnut Creek?
Yes.
That's one of those things, right?
And you collect sales taxes too, right?
And I collect sales tax. Yep. And I have
That's-
to pay, I pay quarterly.
Well, you know, that's one of the things that I keep bringing up with respect to recycling. Recyclers, generally speaking, sell their stuff into a market where you don't actually have to charge sales tax. But reusers do.
Yeah.
So we reusers collect sales tax. Urban Ore pays right now, the last month or so, we paid $29,000 to the state for sales tax.
Wow.
That's, I mean, you know, if you're not doing reuse as a community, you're missing out on all that sales tax revenue. And it's, you know, that's just the beginning of it, because then you get payroll taxes too, because everything we do is labor intensive, just like with you.
Yeah.
You're probably very labor intensive. You've got to have other people. If you've got 2 stores, you've got 2 managers, right? So you're bossing those managers and all that. And so, and then you're doing the payroll tax calculations and all that. You're your own bookkeeper?
I have a bookkeeper.
You do have a bookkeeper. Good for you.
Yeah. I was doing it in the beginning, but it became too big. You know, when you have your own business, you have to do everything. I do all of my purchasing, all of my inventory, all of my sales, all my marketing. So I had to pass off the entry of all the receipts to somebody else.
Well, that's another problem in small businesses is how much do you want to grow and how much do you want to bring in investor money to do it? How much do you want to build up reserves to do it yourself? How big do you want to be? How big do you want to be?
I'm still formulating that right now. I mean, I'm trying to decide if I want to continue to open more stores, because I think every city, honestly, should have a refill store, whether it's me or somebody else. I just believe in the functionality of it. So I'm trying to determine what my trajectory is yet. I haven't finalized that yet. If it's staying in retail or maintaining this and continuing in education, I'm not sure.
Does expanding in the universities kind of seem like a good move going forward?
It is. I think that catching students right before they go out into the world and they've got good habits already and they've got good knowledge is really important. Working with a public university is extremely difficult. Lots of bureaucracy, lots of levels. So a couple of the startups that I work with, and I know they're actually moved to private universities because there's one zero waste person at the university and it's really easy to roll out things. But holistically, yes, it's a great idea. I think that's the target market of people who are interested anyway, and they just need to know a little bit more and get into some good buying habits.
Yeah, education starts with the young, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sorry to say that our speaker from Dispatch Goods couldn't make it tonight. I know that we have, I don't know if a competitor, but someone in the same field as you are. Caleb is on the call, although he's muted right now. And I wonder if it'd be all right if I asked Caleb, if he's willing to unmute himself, if he has anything to add to the goals and challenges in the refillable arena. Caleb? And if you...
Yeah, hey guys. Well, I just still wanted to say it's been great to hear from Planet Renew and just to hear what you're moving through and all the. I feel like we share a lot of those same challenges and successes. Yeah, I've been working with the refill shop for the last year and a half now. Started out as a customer and just really passionate about zero waste, and had a change in career. I was in the event fields before the pandemic, and yeah, the refill shop had Re-Up Refill had an opportunity for me to join with them, and so I've been really grateful for helping to grow the business. And in the time that I've been with them, we moved locations we started out in a small shipping container, just kind of trying to grow our customer base and grow the concept and customers. And we, wanted to improve our service, we found a larger space. And so I think, yeah, part of, our challenges or part of like our innovation, things that we're really trying to improve is the customer experience and what it actually takes to refill. And it's kind of a messy thing. There's spills, but as I was leaving the shop today, I was watching some of the staff were cleaning up, a big spill that happened. And I just feel personally, it's kind of it's a really elementary or just very basic what we're doing. And with the type of technology that we have out there, that this refilling should be so much more automated and so much more accessible for people. You're asking what type of demographic do we see, and our store being located in Rockridge, we see a range of people, young, old, all different abilities. And we're really trying to be aware of how we offer our service and being able to support all of those folks. And I feel like we
you're
to just
so you're both trying to do something which I think is hard in a retail business. At least in my experience, it's hard, which is you have to, at the same time as you're selling, you have to educate your customers. You have to convince them that what you're selling is something that they really should want. And it takes time and it takes effort. And the most successful businesses I've seen have found some really super innovative way to educate their customers that they ought to spend the money in their store. What's the best innovation you've seen in this sphere?
It's a good question. Yeah, I would say a lot of our customers are people who are already in the movement. And I guess, people are starting to catch on to the whole refill movement. And I think that they understand there's enough people that are making the connection that we need to stop wasting. We need to stop creating more garbage, and that recycling, I don't think people quite understand the rate that recycling is not happening. But I guess just getting the outreach and people discovering us to begin with is a big part in that education. Is I think when people hear about refilling, they kind of understand this concept. So for instance, we were featured on KQED and a zero waste lifestyle interview, and there was a panel that we were featured on, and that created a decent amount of business, just people hearing about us and coming into the shop. I really like, sorry, I didn't get your name, but just the workshop that Planet Renew is planning to do in the upcoming month on just zero waste lifestyles, and just beyond just, waste reduction and shopping, but also in your lifestyle. I think having or hosting more of those workshops, we did a little Kickstarter as we were moving to the new location, and we offered to some of our bigger donors a eco home consultation. And so we came in and we interviewed them, and we interviewed their lifestyle. We got we had different pillars of kind of an eco home that we touched on. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of reach out and educate people. And a lot of those folks, a lot of the stuff that we were touching on was more trivial, and we did get into some higher level stuff. But I think, doing, workshops is a great way to outreach and educate folks. And, one thing that I don't feel like we've touched on much, which I'm not, exactly sure of all the products that Planet Renew is using, but I can only imagine that aside from them being low packaging, they're also biodegradable and non-toxic. And I think that's another avenue or perspective that we need to push and educate people on, is that it's not only that you're reducing your single-use packaging, but you're also reducing toxic chemicals and toxic, waste that's going out into the environment, which is a huge, bonus that we need to highlight. So those are a couple areas I could see.
Amy, did you want to add anything about how to educate your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kelly makes a good point. I mean, everything that we offer is either reusable or compostable or biodegradable. And I don't think people realize what's in a lot of the products that they purchase. I mean, one of the things we tell people is look at the ingredients, whether it's your laundry detergent. If your laundry detergent has chemicals or ingredients you don't recognize, those can leave a residue on your clothes and then they get washed back into the gray water. Shampoo and conditioners have a lot of chemicals. These are just things that people don't realize until they know. So I think that's a good point on just sharing and educating that your product is either, non-toxic and or organic, biodegradable, compostable. Those are the essential elements of zero waste, things that are good for you. I know I was personally shocked when I started in this space that things on the grocery store weren't necessarily good for me. I thought, well, someone should have vetted it out, but they haven't. They've pushed it through. I mean, our standards for beauty, for example, are so much lower than in Europe. Europe, they don't pass half the stuff that we pass. And these are things that we're putting on our skin, could be makeup, could be lotions. So that's an important key, I think, to education, just letting people know, look at your ingredients and look at what you're using on your body, in your body, on your hair, and make sure it's a good product.
Well, I want to hold you on that, the look at the ingredients part. And I want to just share a story, a success story. I represented a pet food retail chain, and there's nothing secret about what I'm going to tell you, but they really did something I think is incredibly brilliant that I'm just going to pass on because we have a lot of business people on this call. They were competing at the time with grocery pet food, which, Alpo and crappy things like that. And they focused on look at the ingredients, but they needed someone to tell the story because what they wanted to do was sell a big bag of food that cost a lot more money than you can get in the grocery. But they wanted people to look at the ingredients. So they did a couple of things that worked. They spent a lot of money training their employees on the different products so that the employees could credibly talk about the ingredients on the bag. But the biggest thing they did was they roped in someone to be their voice. They invested a lot of money in pet rescue, adoption centers, and encouraged pet rescue and adoption so that when you went in and you picked out your new little puppy, you got a little gift bag. And in the gift bag, it had a little bag of pet food that was only sold at this retail chain. And if you got your first bag of food there, you were going to get all your bags of food. There was the theory. But what really worked was that the rescue centers that were being supported by this company talked them up big time. And as the adoptions grew and the pet population from the adoptions grew, so did the customer base. So they used somebody else to make their case for them, and they trained their employees big time to make the case. I'm not saying that that's something you could or should do. I'm just throwing it out as an idea to think about.
Yeah.
Inspire.
Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'd like to throw in one too, and that is from 40 years of working in reuse. That you can invert this whole discussion with customers in that customers educate you. They constantly are telling you why they're coming to your store and when, it's usually started by them saying, thank you for being in this business. It's such a wonderful thing that you're doing. But then they go on to explain their philosophy of why they're doing this. And the most important thing you can do is listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit hard for salespeople to do that, but we need to train our salespeople so that they will listen, because that's one part of selling, is listening to your customer stories. And they will tell you that what they're doing is trying to save the earth, just like you are. You're shaking your head, yes. And I see that that you agree. I mean, you found the same phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, most people that come in my store want to tell me their story. They want to tell you something happened, or it was either with their health or an incident or an experience that kind of led them to the path of just being more aware and wanting to get a better product. Or
And here you are wanting to clean up the store and put things away and do all that. And here they are talking to you about things that you've already heard 2 or 3 times that same day from different people. But you just, just somehow or other, it all works out. And I think listening is really important.
I agree.
So if you could only clone yourself 10 or more times, you could open 10 or more stores, but you could listen to customers all day.
That's true.
How they can save the planet.
Yep.
Well, Amy, thank you for joining us and telling us about your business. I'm always really interested in how businesses work. I don't know why. Some people have interest. I'd like to know what works in the business and what doesn't. So and this is, this is the future. Zero waste is the future. You're part of it. And I'm thrilled that you came tonight and shared that with us. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's great talking with everybody.
And good luck in the business.
Thank you.
So that kind of is our show for the evening. We also usually have an open forum. I did have an open forum item, which is that one of our older colleagues and cherished colleagues is Arthur Boone. And I've learned today that he broke his hip recently. And he is currently rehabilitating himself at Piedmont Gardens, which is a senior facility off of Piedmont Avenue in Oakland. He's able to have visitors. So I wanted to pass on from Ruth Abbey, who told me this, that he's in pain and recovering from a broken hip, if in case you want to call him or write him or see him.
Well, I'd like to add to that, John. He's been, interestingly, before he broke his hip, he had been working for years on a display idea that he has for making some kind of display where he could take all these unrecyclable plastics and display them to the public. And the idea would be to have this be something with signage, and it would be movable and portable and so on. So we've gotten involved in that. We have a handyman guy, Max Bechtel, who is really good at using our stuff to create things that are physical, 3-dimensional objects. And Arthur's idea was that it should look sort of like a popcorn machine, and there'd be a bin on top and then kind of a cabinet down below. So we're right in the middle of designing this right now with Arthur, and we're going to use our ace guy who does all this kind of stuff and uses exclusively materials that he buys from, or he doesn't buy our stuff, he just uses it. We'll need some new stuff probably, but it'll be mostly fasteners and things like that. And so this is, Arthur is just, he's a font of ideas, and this is one of them, and we're trying to help him in his hour of need here. But, it goes before he fell. He's 84 years old, and he's still plugging along.
In fact, one of his other passions is planting trees, and I'm told that he broke his hip while falling over planting a tree. So
yeah, I think he tripped on either a tree or a piece of lumber or something like that, and landed pretty hard.
Well, he's much cherished, and if you feel inclined to call or visit him, he's at Piedmont Gardens in Oakland.
He's an Episcopal minister, among other things.
Yep.
Spiritual man, but gruff.
Doug, are you still there? Did you want to add anything about current legislation before we adjourn?
I think he might have checked out.
No, he's there. Doug?
Okay.
Oh, maybe he has checked out. Well, in that case, let's adjourn until next month. I'm not sure what the show is for next month. For July, we're doing scavenging and the history of scavenging. We hope to get more business people involved. So look to second Tuesday in the month for something cool about zero waste in business. And thank you for joining tonight.
There's Doug. Hey, Doug. Are you there?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I sent out an email earlier a few hours ago, kind of summarizes where we stand as far as legislation. A lot of the bills that we most likely would be willing to support, they're going to be coming off the suspense list. I mean, it was called the suspense list. And if you make it, then we can start gearing up to write support letters to those for those bills that we particularly have a fondness for. So if you go to the NCRA website and click on advocacy and also 2022 legislation, you'll see the most current information.
All painstakingly hyperlinked.
Yeah, right.
Neil, how about you?
How about me in terms of legislation?
How about
no,
you just about Neil?
I'm kidding. I'm here in New Jersey at my daughter's house, enjoying this terrific conversation. I, like John, admire entrepreneurship, and of course, the two presenters, the two new stores, are hopefully the wave of the future. I certainly shop at those places and other reuse places. I don't know what else to report. I continue to work on EPR issues, anti-incineration issues. And I have a couple of articles coming out, which I'll tell you about very briefly. One is called The Second US Recycling Revolution. I'm dating that 2018, the date when China cut us off. And I see a new revolution bubbling up. And I also describe the counterattack against the revolution from our corporate friends. And the other article I'm about to finish is about 3 new developments, which I think are fascinating. I hope they're the wave of the future. I don't know. One is curb sort, where you have a specialized truck and the worker brings an open bin and puts the glass in this compartment and so on and so forth. They're operating in Europe. There are several communities in the US, and I'm looking at the economics of it, and I'm very impressed. A slight increase in cost of collection, tremendous savings in processing, and of course, increased revenue in marketing. And the third thing I'm looking at, second, is 3 technologies. Curb sort mini MRFs, small scale 50-ton to 150-ton per day systems that can serve rural, urban, suburban areas. The capitalization is an incredible bargain. The operating costs are lower. And of course, depending on whether you're bringing in single stream or dual stream systems, your market price is good. It could be excellent, but you don't suffer. And the third thing, the third new innovation is direct marketing. I'll just give you one example. It's if you don't mind, you could ask questions. But I'm working in Warren County, New York, right in the middle of the Adirondack stand where we were years ago for our events. I'm working with a wonderful activist named Tracy Frisch. I first worked with her fighting incinerators up in that part of the country 30 years ago, and it's a delight working with her again. And she mostly has done great research. I researched the end markets. We found paper and plastic mills that wanted this stuff. And she described a situation where small towns are keeping their corrugated separate, but they're paying hundreds of dollars per ton to transport their corrugated down to Albany, where it's processed, where they have to pay for processing. And she calculated that in this one small county of 50, 60,000 people, they were spending $120,000 shipping, $60,000 shipping and $60,000 for processing. And we found companies in Syracuse, not far away, that if they just held on to the stuff for 20-ton loads, they'll come pick it up for free. So we're working on all kinds of mechanisms to get individual groups, civic groups, certainly cities and towns and counties, to get involved in direct marketing to cut out the brokers and of course the big waste corporations which are seeking to control everything. And I said all of that sitting in my daughter's living room on my last day of vacation. And you guys are contributing to my vacation, so thank you so much. This conversation has been wonderful.
Well, thank you, Neil. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'm going to adjourn the meeting and we'll see you next month, second Tuesday of the month, 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.